we are at the beginning of our last series of meetings where we're going to present sort of the culmination of the ideas from the last year that we've been working. I just looked at it before I came. We started 1 year and 13 days ago on this. And now we're running down towards the end and entering into a period which many people have been calling for at the beginning, which, when is the vote? When is the vote? So we're at that point right now, and what we're going to do tonight is we're going to present the ideas that have come from you and what you're going to be voting on, and then we're going to explain to you very clearly. I know everybody's received a notice to vote and how to vote, but we want to walk that through so you know, and so you can tell as many people to vote as possible. Before we get started, I'd like to invite Assemblymember Arievstein up to say a few words. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I wanted to join you tonight just to make sure that people, we talked earlier about making a commitment to make sure that all the residents who live in the development have the right to vote. And we're seeing through on that commitment. If people have questions or concerns, this is your decision, these are your votes. So really encourage you to ask those questions. You can ask me, Chanel from my office is here, you can ask her, you can ask anyone from the team. I want you to decide what's best for Reese. It is your decision. And whether you want to continue as Section 9 public housing, or if you're interested in going to RADPAC, those are tough choices that people have to make, but it is your choice to make for yourself and your development and for your families. So please ask hard questions, because that's what we're here for. We're here to help you, let you understand the facts. There are risks, obviously, with the federal government right now. There's a risk of losing all federal funding in New York State, so that affects Section 8 and Section 9. But those risks are real, and then we just have to have those honest conversations with each other. So, but this is your decision, your vote, and I want to thank you for letting me be here. And if there's a question or two, can I take them? Or if there's a question or two from people in the audience, I have to take them. Yes. So there's a question. So my understanding, which I was involved in, there were some concerns around the process for the TA vote. That process, there were some questions about it, and then the people who were nominated, there were some issues, and that was brought to my attention and other people's attention. That vote was delayed, and so that vote now, people are going to be nominated at some future date, and the vote will happen later. But the TA vote and this vote are just totally different things. This is just about whether people want to move forward with this. A TA vote is just to be the TA leadership going forward. Those are two separate things. Yeah, of course.
Thank you. To lead back on your question, over the last meeting, the president and part of the meeting they had with the city, it was said, we will not go forward with the actual vote until the elections are done.
That part.
Now, elections has, for some reason, it has to be for
Yeah.
one, somebody was not part of their when they for 17 years, overseen by management, how management dropped the ball on that person not being part of the league. And the second is, it was a correction of the name. To correct the name, what does that do is scratch the name, put the correct, and the day of the vote say, listen, this correction has been made, let's move the vote. So now the vote has been moved almost 2 months forward, but we still going to vote.
So who said that the TA vote would happen first? Who made that representation?
What's the letter? Stop acting like
It
y'all.
was in a meeting.
I don't. Who said that?
The letters that y'all put up. Stop acting like y'all don't know what's going on. Y'all know what's going on.
I wasn't a part of that. But I'm happy to talk to
The
you
letters that they put
about
on
it.
everybody do or state.
Is there another question? Go ahead.
I'm more concerned with who this independent arbiter is going to count the votes.
Yeah.
And what I would tell everybody here is, once the toothpaste is out of the tube, you can't put it back in. So do your homework, your decision, read the documents, and ask questions, because you, as residents and citizens, are the ones that can make the demands. You should be dictated everything, but I guess my big question is, who arbiter who's gonna count these votes, because it's not listed in the press release.
So you want to know the name of the arbiter? It's going to be in the PowerPoint today, and then you can research who they are, and you can go through it. What?
Yeah.
Well, they're going to talk about it today.
Right,
and you can-
nobody votes for these people, so how they in?
Can I just say something? If you feel like after today, you don't feel like you have complete information.
No.
If you feel like after today you don't have complete information about that, you can, my office is not far, for 7th and B, come over to my office, I'm happy to talk about it, and then we'll go figure out why they're not providing full information today.
A lot of people don't even
That's a
understand.
little bit of background.
I didn't know anything about, probably 9 or section 9.
Yeah.
What is the pros and cons if we stay with section 9?
Yeah, so Section 9 is existing public housing. It is a federal program with federal protection. The rents are set by the federal government and the income that the development gets. You cannot borrow money on the property that's a Section 9 property. So the way to fix up those buildings is through capital dollars, or the federal, state, and city capital dollars. Where Section 8, it moves out of the federal protections with new Section 8 protections, and you can borrow against the building, and you can borrow money to do more capital improvements. They'll go through that in detail, but there are differences, and there are different funding sources. The Section 8 rent that the developer gets will be a new developer, is a higher amount of money than NYCHA gets for Section 9, so they will have more money. So that's how they fix up the buildings, with more money from the rent and also borrowing against the building. So but there are different protections, and that's why you have a lawyer to help you through if you did decide to go through Section 8, there are protections that the lawyer would write into a Section 8 agreement, like other developments have done.
I just have a question. So, with this new PAC program, right? This is why we're here today, to see if we're gonna transfer
If you're gonna vote
over to
for it,
PAC.
right.
Okay. So, everybody has to be on board, because if you're saying that, say if it's 90 people, right, or 100, and 90 people say they want to do it, 10 says they don't, does the project still go through?
It's a majority, so if 500 people vote and 251 vote one way and 249 vote a different way, then it goes forward. Like any election, the majority rules. That's kind of the ground rules of the
Because it was
Senate.
to my knowledge that everybody has to be on board.
No, it doesn't have an individual thing, it's the entire development voting together. Yeah, so it's.
We don't want it.
If 500 people vote and, 300 people say no, and 200 people say yes, it doesn't go forward.
Because I live in 1115, and I don't know how safe it is for all that steam coming out that ground like that.
Yeah, Paul.
Nobody has came to me.
We told NYCHA, they've looked at it, they say it's safe, I don't know. The ground is so hot there, it is
Do you see how the
ridiculous.
steam is coming out in the grass? It's
I
to the
know.
point that it's killing all the trees.
I know, and I think it's dangerous, but NYCHA says they check it every day.
I don't want nitrogen.
I'm not an architect or an engineer, so I don't know.
Section
but-
9 either.
Okay, so thank you all for letting me speak.
Now,
Let me get the last question. Let me get the last
Everybody
question.
doesn't know or understand what's going on. The TAs are really just looking for organization.
Okay. The only question I have in the presentation is comes on about these questions. So let me begin here, and I want to start beginning with some
eyes are the shit.
introductions.
Y'all just scared to
So,
take that corporation and go on.
I wanted to ask you a question.
We got the
Good evening, everybody. My name is Simon. There are questions in the TA board is asking us to clarify the difference between. Excuse me, everybody. Hello. I want to clarify for folks the difference between the election for the resident association and the vote that we're going to talk about tonight for the PACS program. They are completely separate. I will find out, because I don't have all the details about why exactly the TA election was postponed. All I know is that there were some steps that were not followed appropriately for the nomination process. But I will have more information to report back during Q&A. But I want to clarify that these are completely unrelated elections and votes, and you will have the opportunity to participate in the vote. So let's move on with the presentation. We'll do the Q&A at the end, respectfully.
No, respectfully.
No, excuse me. The if anyone's disrupting the presentation, you're gonna have to be asked to leave, okay?
No.
So let's move on.
Pretty
And
much
then we're gonna have Q&A at the end.
You want
Okay,
out.
thank you.
You want out and telling us what to do. You want out, you lying, you don't gotta
So
go.
we have a busy agenda tonight. We'll do some introductions. We'll talk a little bit about the voting options. We'll talk about the guiding principles and the design proposals and the plan document, which is called Uplift Reese Houses. And we'll then dive in and talk about the voting process in detail. And that's where that question about how does it get arbitrated and so forth will be answered. And then we'll open it up for question and answers. Now, we've already begun and people have questions. There is a time for that at the end. And I would like to reiterate what Simon just said. This should be a question and answer period, a fair exchange of ideas, opinions. We may not all agree on everything, but we will answer questions. We ask from you that you be respectful to everybody in the room and respectful of the time, and so everybody can answer their questions. There's some basic ground rules that we need to have a productive conversation and a productive meeting. So, if anybody doesn't know me at this point, I'm Jonathan Martin. I'm from DFJ Planning. I work for the Jacob Reese Tenants Association, which is Miss Daphne Williams, Miss Mary Cannon, Miss Sharon Sturgis, Miss Nilsa Owens, and Miss Diane Gomez. I'm joined tonight by two of my team members, Niall Johnson and Evan McCarty. And also with us, we have representatives from NYCHA. You just met Simon Kowitsky, he's the Vice President of Community Planning and Project Development. We have also with us Courtney Yu, who is Deputy Director of NYCHA Voting. So she will be able to answer those questions. And we also have Jamie Shagley with us, who is a community planner. For the Q&A session, many of us will be up front and we'll be able to answer your questions. So I want to begin by talking a little bit about the timeline. As I mentioned, this has been a long process. At this point, we've done a long process so we can engage with you and also bring your ideas into the plan. And indeed, that's what is contained in Uplift Reese. This is available on the website. It will also be distributed to every apartment early next week, I believe. But we have arrived here at sort of the end of the process. We began by listening and learning. Then we talked about design options and ideas. You guys wrote a lot of information. I don't know if anybody remembers when we were in the cafeteria in this building and we did stick-it notes and we worked on maps. All of that was brought into this document. So I really encourage you all to read it. You will find some echoes here of this process and your voice in this document, I believe. And then we move towards sort of presenting some real sort of concrete ideas of how things could be if we move forward with the PAC program. And now at this point where we've arrived at the vote. And so the vote is going to happen beginning February 28th. Thus far, we've had about 400 individual participants, more now that we have other people and new people here tonight. And the guidelines laid out in this document, Uplift Reese, reflect that community input from that process. So, what will the voting options be? I think people are aware of that based on the conversation we just had with Mr. Epstein, but it's a choice between entering formally into the PAC program or staying in Section 9. Harvey did a good job of sort of explaining the difference between those, but they both rely on federal funding, but they come from different funding streams. Under a yes vote to vote into PAC, it becomes a partnership with private or non-profit developers, and they receive money from a Section 8 funding stream, which dedicates more money per unit, and as Harvey explained, the ability to capitalize on those buildings to make improvements. It does rely on federal funding, and the important thing is to remember the rent and your resident rights and protections remain the same, effectively, as Section 9. The other choice is to remain in Section 9, which is how Reese Houses is currently funded. The development will continue along those lines and dependent on federal funding allocated on an annual basis. And that's sort of, I'll get into that in a minute. There's a big differential between what the need is to fix up all of NYCHA's properties, really, but let's talk about Jacob Reese houses specifically. The need to fix up Jacob Reese houses and what is received through Section 9 funding is insufficient. And this is why the TA board brought this to your attention, and it's why the TA board, which was never going to make the decision by themselves, has brought this now, at this point, to a vote of the community. So let's talk about what PACT really is. Permanent Affordability Commitment Together is a program that provides alternate funding. Currently, as you can see in this chart right here, what's shown in the blue over these years of 2011 through 2023, the blue line or the blue bar represents what NYCHA needs to fix up its developments. When we say fix up, we mean modernize them, bring them up to current standards. We know we don't have that at these houses. The very small orange, that is the annual funding that they get from Section 9. So you can see that differential right in this chart. PACT unlocks funding to complete the comprehensive repairs that are needed, and it relies on public-private partnerships between developers and NYCHA, and that is how the projects are capitalized. People have asked here, it's like, well, how are you making money on it? I'm not. I'm a planner. I represent the TA board. The TA board is bringing you information. And again, I've probably said this a few times. It does not make sense to vote one way or the other without reading this, because this will explain the two choices more clearly. How does PACT work? PACT depends on partnerships with private and not-for-profit development partners. And usually these are called PACT partners. They come in sort of an assembly of a team that provides 3 different distinct services. The first one is comprehensive investments. That's really the development model, where they come in and they fix up the buildings. The second one is professional management. So in this instance, you will not have NYCHA management anymore. You will have a private development management team, who this is what they do, and they will be property managers moving forward. And then finally, enhanced services. So that's support services, social needs services, and other amenities that would be brought to, in this instance, Reese houses. This is all overseen by public control by NYCHA and the residents together. So the TA board remains, there's still options to organize, but NYCHA is looking over the shoulder. They have to by federal regulations. And that's the other thing that I think you should understand about PACT. PACT isn't some sort of Wild West type of scenario. All of the documents that Harvey was talking about are poured over, they're signed, they're very particular. And the reason they're very particular is because they're enforced and guarded by the rules and regulations at the federal level that HUD sets forth. NYCHA's job is to enforce those, and there is accountability. If things are not going correctly, NYCHA still owns the buildings, owns the land, and has oversight over everything that goes on. And their job is really to play that role, which is a different role than they play right now. So they're still very much involved. Your resident rights and protections remain essentially the same. Rent is calculated at 30% of your adjusted gross income, just as it is currently. There are no additional fees and charges above what you're currently paying. you are automatically going to be eligible for Section 8. So any discussion like, well, maybe I'm behind on rent or I've got this situation, if you are currently a legal resident at these houses, you are guaranteed eligibility in Section 8. This answers a really important question. Well, maybe as they do the transition, some people can't come back. It's not part of the program. You have automatic eligibility. There's also automatic lease renewal. Every year you still have to go through certification, right? Because that is what sets your rent. It's 30% of your income. Temporary relocation is handled and paid for, and you have movers, and you say, well, that word relocation really scares me. The relocation is temporary while construction is happening. And you'll see in here, there's a discussion about that, because what we heard from residents was, would it be possible that we don't have to relocate? Can we stay in an apartment while the work gets done? And the answer is yes, if it's safe to do so. But those life, health, and safety issues have to rule. You cannot be in an apartment. We know about 25% of the apartments at Reese have lead and asbestos. You can't be there while they're abating that. That is not healthy. So there's room to move in this. Right sizing, that has been a big question. There was also discussion about right sizing. What is the right way to go about it for Reese residents? But it is federal law. Again, as we say, we're governed, NYCHA's governed, and all impact program is governed by HUD regulations. And one of those HUD regulations talks about right sizing. If we think about it on a collective basis, we think about it for a second as a community.
No.
It does not seem fair to a family of a mom and 2 or 3 kids living in a 1-bedroom apartment when somebody else is living by themselves in a 4-bedroom. It just does not seem, if we're going to talk about being a community, guys, then let's work after each other's backs, and that's one way to do it. So right sizing, there's language in here that talks about what's the best way to do it here, but we also have to think about what's right and what's going to make a better Reese houses community. Resident organizing is, will continue. The TA board receives money, that will continue. Grievance hearings are part of the process. And then the last thing is job creation. As this is all going on, and there is property management that has to happen. There are jobs, and there's a requirement actually on Section 3 where this whole process has to hire from the Reese community. So there were jobs created out of this process as well. There's lots of information on the project website, but also you have the handout. You can scan that QR code and you can get right to the documents that explain more about residents' rights and protections under the PACT program. So what has happened? Does PACT work? Well, thus far, it has brought about $13.2 billion, and if I went back a few slides, you'll see that that orange bar represents maybe about $2 to $3 billion for the whole of NYCHA. This program has brought about $13.2 billion. There are about 20,000, almost 21,000 units under renovation, and about another 17,000 that are going through this process. We're a little bit behind that process because we haven't had that vote and decided to enter that. But this program is tried and true across this city. So here are some examples of this. And this shows some of the results. There's a playground at Baychester. You can see another basketball court here at Williamsburg. And you can see here this is bike racks, but what's important about this picture is what's in the background, which is a community garden. That was brought forth by the residents. We would like a community garden. This is part of the process that if you enter, we can sit down and we can design these things together in great detail. Building systems and infrastructure. This is basically soup to nuts when necessary. You can see Warren Street, they have solar panels, we have new windows in Williamsburg, upgraded and renovated elevators at Independence, and then also in Independence an upgraded heating system. And we did some site tours together. Some of you came. We saw the basement of one of the towers of Independence. It was astonishing how clean and modern that new system was. That could not happen in the Section 9, given the current funding. Security systems. So this is at Independence. Independence wanted a little bit more security, so they asked for a security personnel on site and a security kiosk. We have cameras, we have improved lighting around the development, and then we have new systems of intercoms and entry systems to protect your safety and your security inside the building, common areas, and then also in your apartment. Here's a picture of some of the common areas. This is the new entry at Independence, new mailboxes, renovated laundry rooms, upgraded vestibules, these kinds of things. Many of these projects have a separate package room where Amazon or whoever can drop off a package and it's safe, or they have big boxes where you get a key to access that. And then the interiors of the apartments. So some completely renovated bathrooms, living areas, and kitchens. And then health and safety. This is where this temporary relocation might come into play. You can see in this picture at the top right how they dug in behind the wall to replace things. And so, it's hard to be there when they're taking out complete walls and replacing pipes behind. Those decisions will have to be made. We know that these houses needs a lot of remediation and also attention to the building systems. So what will happen if you vote yes on PACT? It'll kick off sort of a second phase of this, and the first part of that is the PACT partner team selection. That's that group that I was telling you about, the developers and then the people who manage the property and then the social services providers. Essentially, we have fancy acronyms here. This one, RFEI, Request for Expressions of Interest. So we put out this document as well as a full write-up of things that are expected and we want people to look at. And developers pull together their teams, and hopefully some people respond when they say, we're interested. At that point, there will be probably a next stage where we ask them to put more specificity on it, and eventually, the TA Board of Residents will select the right partner. How does that work? Quite simply. People say we're interested, we say put together a proposal, they come in and they present the proposal. And the decision is made by residents and the TA board. NYCHA's there to help. Maybe I'll be still around and I will help. But the idea here is I want you to understand that it's not NYCHA to decide making those decisions. Even who you're going to work with in the future is made by, that decision is made by you. At that point, once we sort of have an idea of proposal, they're going to want to get down to nuts and bolts. And those nuts and bolts will kick off the design and resident engagement. It'll look like what we've just done, but to be honest, it'll be better because you'll actually be sitting down and working. And those people who went with me to Williamsburg saw that what they did for this, they took a space and they made it a design center. People came in and residents worked together and they selected the types of cabinets, the types of flooring, these kinds of things. And then ultimately it will go into construction. You're probably wondering how long this will take. The first 2 bullet points, probably about a year and a quarter. And then construction will proceed from there, probably 2 to 3 years to get through construction. It's a long road, I understand, but at the end you will have essentially completely renovated these houses. What happens if you remain in Section 9? The governance will remain the same. You will be continued to be managed as you are today by NYCHA and their property management. NYCHA just as the same as under PACT. We own the land and the buildings. The properties will remain 100% public as public housing. And the workforce, the supers and people that you see on site, that property management team will remain as they are today, NYCHA. Your rights will essentially remain the same, they won't change. They'll stay exactly the same, even under PACT they say exactly the same.
No, it ain't.
And the anticipated renovations will not address Jacob Reese House's physical needs to what we're talking about under PACT. Just have to be quite blunt about that. The reason is I have to go back 17 slides or whatever it is and show you those numbers again. This is what this is about. NYCHA has a mission here to put you in good housing. NYCHA does not have the money under Section 9. So your decision here is really about these two options. Let me talk a little bit about the conditions, because we've had the architects on site now for about a year. We know a lot about the conditions. We have a recommendation from the architects that all exterior masonry should be replaced. The roofs, all but one were recently replaced, but the problem is they're still leaking through the sides and the parapets need to be replaced. That's their recommendation. The windows should be replaced. The plumbing and electrical system is not up to speed and should be addressed and redone. Heating and cooling, we know that the current systems have not been kept up, that's it. They've never been replaced in a long time, and they're reaching the end of their useful livelihood. Additionally, we don't have cooling here. And so the opportunity to install a new system that provides potentially heating and cooling is a possibility. The elevators, they need renovation and upgrading, right? We have lead-based paint and we have soil contamination. Lead-based paint and asbestos is in about 25% of the apartments. That's what we're hearing back. And so that has to be taken out of them. The soil remediation is a little bit of a different situation because regardless of how you vote, yes or no, according to PACT, there is a plan to remediate that soil. It will begin once the work that is currently going on, what they're doing right now is flood protections post-Hurricane Sandy. Once that work is done, then that work can begin on the soil. So that is going to happen one way or the other. Accessibility is a big issue. We know there are about 1,000 residents here that are over the age of 65, and accessibility becomes an issue. The report back from the architects is there's really only a handful of apartments that could be easily modified to accommodate those needs. And that's partly because when you go in, you have to go up a level, and it's also the configuration where the buildings, nobody was thinking about this in 1938 when they were building these houses. They made the hallways narrow. They are not up to federal standards. The elevators aren't up to federal standards. We'll talk about this a little bit later. And apartment interiors, you guys that live there, you know that needs a lot of help. And the common areas. So the common areas are not just the areas inside the building with the lobbies, it's also the grounds. And it also discusses and brings it up to mind that there's really not much, or not much security in terms of camera, the need for more lighting. So this is the report back on the existing conditions from the architect. Which leads us now to the plan document and the guiding principles that came out of our discussions with you.
Yeah. You record everything?
And they revolve around 4 ideas. Jacob Reese houses, as we move forward, should be livable. And livable means investing in buildings and grounds and providing social services and amenities to raise the overall quality of life. That's what you guys deserve. It's what NYCHA hasn't been able to provide. This is what the opportunity is today. They should be affordable, maintaining rents and cost of living at their current levels. And I'm reading I've written it down, but I'm reading directly from the plan. This is what it says in the plan. And ensuring that Reese Rec houses remains affordable to current and future public housing residents. Key in there is for the current and future, and the other key word is public housing residents. Jacob Reese houses should be secure. Secure talks about maintaining the community under its current character, remaining as a cohesive and safe community, and that no displacement or loss of tenant rights will result by joining the PAC program. And healthy. Environmental issues that have long plagued this community will be addressed and resolved. So with that, I'm going to move forward and talk about some of the design strategies. These are ideas that we floated, and I just looked at the data today before I came to this meeting. We had 570, we had many of these images out in the hallway there. We gave people red dots and green dots. If you like something, put a green dot. If you don't like something, put a red dot. We had 575 dots in 2 meetings. Of that, we only had 41 red dots, and about half of them were on existing conditions. Like, this is my existing condition. I'm not happy with that. So there was overwhelming support and interest for some of these ideas. So, apartment interiors should be safe from environmental hazards, functional, modern, creating comfort and peace of mind for residents. This talks about if you need something fixed, you need increased and better responsiveness. If you need somebody to come and fix something, that has to happen. New appliances and modern finishes, mitigation of environmental hazards such as mold, lead, and asbestos, and new electric heating and plumbing systems. And here are some of the images that are in the document. So what we see on the left is an existing kitchen, looks like from a vacant apartment, but there's that wall. That wall isn't pink in reality. The architects pegged that and said, could it be possible to remove that? And if we did that, we get a much more open plan. It's a way of almost cheating time, right? Because these buildings were built and designed in 1938. We live differently today, so can we make some of those adjustments? Here are some other examples. This one's a different configuration, where still you have this kitchen that is in this little box, but that can be opened up. Here's another view. This is in a different set of finishing, again with the wall removed so you can see the apartment. And then also improvements to kitchens and bathrooms. So we have a before here with the blue wall in the background on the left, and then we have renovated with not just the walls, but all the plumbing fixtures, from faucets to bathtubs to toilets. Buildings and lobbies should be safe, modern, and clean, free from heating and elevator outages, facade deterioration, pests, and other building-wide issues. Elevators will be fully modernized. Water heating and electrical systems will promote resident comfort and safety. We've spoken a little bit about security cameras and lobby doors and intercom systems, level of security. And lobbies, they should be welcoming and regularly clean. We have some imagery here that will show you what we're talking about. So we have a before and after. And to be honest with you, the before looks kind of nice as well. There's no sort of talk about that. That's a very nice lobby. But modernizing, what you see in this picture right here is the idea of extending out the lobby just a little bit, opening it up, making it bigger, letting more daylight in there. Again, sort of cheating time on the old architectural style. Community programs. So the program, Jacob Reese Housing should be a place to build community with upgraded amenities, community spaces, and access to social services. Expanding ground floor plans may be possible, and they could create a more welcoming and modern lobbies, as well as providing additional community space. So here we're talking about expanding the lobbies and opening up and acquiring more space on the ground floor to make that entrance difference a little bit more pleasant. Access to fresh food and local shopping. So some of those expanded areas could provide amenities. organizations, so again, partnering with not-for-profit social service providers, and community spaces that meet your needs. There's very little community meeting space at Jacob Reese Houses for almost 4,000 people. There used to be, that is gone. So can we bring some of this back? So here's one image. You can see the existing building, and here is a potential to expand the ground floor, and you can see up above with some community space. Building entrances and public spaces should be beautified, and they should enhance public safety and accessibility. So we want to look here, and we're proposing upgrades that encourage allow all residents to use those public spaces. High-level security, actively monitored security cameras and security kiosks as an idea, and increase site lighting and well-maintained landscape. So here's an example. We're looking at the center circle, 10, and it doesn't look very good right now because there's a lot of construction going on, but here's an image of what could be envisioned with renovation. And you can see here that we have new plantings and we have protected bike path, turning that circle to make it accessible to more users, enhance security features, outdoor seating, and the like. There's also a lot of discussion about preserving history. So historical elements came up a lot, and they're around the campus, and they should be modernized, and intentional landscaping and site design to create a more pleasant environment. So community character in the plan says will be prioritized in any of these site designs and upgrades. New property management and maintenance staff will have the resources to maintain them, and new restored landscape features will reflect that unique character of Reese. You don't want to lose that. Many people say we like things, we want to kind of fix stuff, but we could also do some improvements. So let's work on that together without losing this idea of history. So here we can see what the amphitheater used to look like. A shiny example. Lady Bird Johnson came and cut the ribbon here because it was so innovative at its time. Since gone into disrepair and disuse, so can it be renovated? And so here's an image of that area. You can see the amphitheater to the left. And what about the idea of bringing the trellis back? Yeah. Something like that. Again, this is sort of an image, an idea that precise designs will be worked on in sort of the next phase. But first, we have to have a community decision. Environmental resiliency. So measures should be taken to minimize the sources of soil, water, noise, and air pollution that residents currently face, creating a healthier environment for Reese residents. So, mentioned the remediation of contaminated soil. Beyond that, we have talked about remediation of asbestos and lead, but we've also heard that we've got this FDR and you've got Con Edison to the south. Can we envision a buffer, something that gives you a little bit of breathing space between that source of pollution of noise and air and your community? We live right next to that. I think we could look at that, and that's one of the proposals here. So here's the existing condition, and then here we would do a green buffer, a lot more planting, and those trees would help minimize that impact. So last slide here for my part is new construction for modern living. So the construction of new buildings could provide modern homes and amenities and solve that accessibility problem that I was talking about earlier for seniors and families, as well as new spaces for community activities. So it could provide brand new homes for residents, modern environmentally friendly buildings. It could better accommodate seniors, disabled residents, and others with accessibility needs. And ground floor amenity spaces could meet the needs of the community.
I'm waiting for you
Again, this is all what do you need,
when the
what
fuck the
kinds of ideas.
what the
And
voting
some of those ideas
keep
are actually
stretching it
listed
out
here,
because
because
nobody
many
fucking
of you
asks questions.
contributed those ideas, those thoughts. We listened, hopefully, we listened very carefully, and you'll see some of that. So here's some examples of new residential buildings and other NYCHA developments. So we have a sort of community room at Betances. We have the Morris houses where a new building has actually been put in, and it was put in on the corner. You can see, even though it's a modern design, it fits in very well. I think it's a very sensitive piece of architecture, given the existing buildings. And in some of the houses, this is a workout space or a gym that is on campus. So here is an image along Avenue D. This is just an example. There's no plan to do anything. That's all has to be discussed. But we wanted to express to show you what this might offer. And so here could be a new building that goes in, provides amenities on the ground floor, and living above. It's interesting, one of the comments I remember when we showed this previously is somebody said, boy, you know, balconies might be a security issue. Again, this is an idea when you get down to the nuts and bolts of designing this, that will come into the design process. But the idea that there is an opportunity to solve the accessibility problem and provide modern, environmentally sound living spaces. So with that, I thank you for your attention. I think I talked a little bit long, but I wanted to get everything out to you. I'm going to invite Kobe Yu, who's Deputy Director of Voting for NYCHA, up to talk about the last few slides, which will explain how you vote in this process.
Hi everyone, how are you? Again, my name's Courtney. I work on voting here at NYCHA, and I know that there were some questions that people had on the process, so hopefully this will answer that for you. So just as a reminder, we went through all of that information. What are you going to do with it, right? So just as a reminder, these are your two voting options. So you can vote for PACT, or you can reject PACT and remain in Section 9. I'm not going to go through this in detail because we just had a presentation on it, but just as a reminder. In terms of how will voting happen, right? I know that there are some current concerns around transparency and making sure that this is all fair, right? And we want to make sure that it's as transparent as possible. And so here are a couple ways that we're going to do that. First and foremost, we do have a third-party election administrator. They are the ones who print the ballots, they mail the ballots, and they count the ballots. NYCHA will never touch a ballot. I don't even want to look at a ballot if I don't have to, right? So it's all done by this third-party administrator. In terms of voting methods, we also want to make it as easy as possible. So there are 3 different ways you can vote. You can vote by mail, online, or in person. For the first 30 days, you'll be able to vote by mail and online, and then for the last 10 days, you can also vote in person if you so choose. But you got to choose one method of doing that. Did I say 5? Oh, sorry, 5 days, last 5 days. In terms of minimum participation, listen, we understand that Reese is a really big development, and we want to make sure that as many voices are heard as possible, right? So I'm so thankful that all of you are in this room. I think there's maybe about 40 or 50 people here. There's over 3,000 residents at Reese, right? And so we understand, if everyone in here were to vote today, that's not the best representation, right? We want to make sure as many people vote as possible, and so to even count the ballots and move forward, we do have to reach a threshold of 20% of the heads of households. But within those people that vote, whichever option receives the most votes will apply to the full development, right? So you can't have one apartment that's Section 9, one apartment that's PACT, right? So whichever option receives the most votes will win. Moving forward, so this is our timeline. Right now we are in this, it looks a little gray here, but it's like a light pink box in your presentation. That's kind of our engagement phase, right? So we're doing a lot of meetings as we are here. We're doing a lot of door knocking, phone banking. You'll probably see a mix of all of us knocking on your door at some point. And that's because we want to make sure that everyone has the correct information, right? And all the information they need to make an informed vote. And then again, we'll move into the 30 days of voting. So 25 days, for the first 25 you can vote online or by mail, and then the last 5 you can vote online, by mail, or in person. And then that last kind of dark purple box off to the right-hand side, that is when we certify the vote if you've reached that threshold, and that will all be done by our election administrator again, not by NYCHA. NYCHA never touches a ballot. And so we understand that, like, you know, this is a new process and we want to make sure that everyone has the right information. So we're hosting a series of meetings. They're on your presentation, but they're also on the screen here. Everyone should have gotten flyers on their doors as well. You're certainly welcome to come to all meetings if you would like, hear us talk again. But it is the same presentation. We do have a virtual option as well. So if anyone would like to come again, we're always happy to have you. And so again, you know, we understand that this has been a long time coming, but we're really excited to start voting here pretty soon. We'll be doing a lot of outreach, like I said, so again, door knocking, phone banking, all of the above. We do have a website that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with if you ever want to look for more information. But we also have our contact information on the screen and the presentation in case you have any questions, both for voting and for PACT as well.
We gotta beat the message.
So I think that's it for me. I think we're going to move on to Q&A. I'll pass that to Jonathan.
Okay, thank you, Courtney. So Niall and Sharon, I was looking at that. Sharon are going to grab mics and raise your hand, they'll come by. Again, I would like to ask you to be respectful, both to all of us as community members here. And I would also ask to the team. We're trying to bring you information. You will make the decision. And then finally, be respectful of time. Probably a lot of questions. And it's going to be myself, and it'll be Courtney and Simon, and we'll try and answer the questions as they come along. So let's see, where are the mics? Okay, now why don't you go ahead, right there. Okay, maybe Louise will turn up the volume a little bit.
I'd like to know.
Thank you.
What is this? We got a question.
Okay, sorry.
I'd like to know when this after the voting, how long before the renovation would start?
Thank you for the question. Just as a reminder, my name is Simon Kowitsky. I work for NYCHA, the real estate department. I'm the vice president. So if the community votes to enter the PACT program, it would probably be about 2 years until any renovations would be ready to begin. The process that Jonathan described as an immediate next step would involve selecting who those partners are, who would actually be coming here, making the renovations, taking over from NYCHA as the property manager. That process could take maybe 6 months. And then there's about a year to a year and a half of planning work that partner team would need to do. They want to come on site, they want to do their own investigations to really understand the conditions here, where all the lead-based paint is, where are the other issues that need to be addressed. And they need to prepare drawings and plans and get approval from HUD and other government agencies. So it does take a little bit of a long time. I know it can be hard to swallow sometimes, but it's all done to make sure that we're getting all of our ducks in a row and making the right decisions for that big investment.
Wait. Miss. I have a question.
Huh?
I have a question.
Okay, so from the, this was a question that we received. Okay, so there was a question about funding for the TA board and how that would work. As part of the PACT program, the federal government, HUD, which regulates NYCHA and provides us with all the funding under PACT or under Section 9, requires that if the property transitions to project-based Section 8 through the PACT program, that we preserve the right of the tenant association or a elected tenant body to organize and represent the community. They would also continue to receive tenant participation funding, which is how the organization promotes and helps to facilitate different kinds of events across the campus. We would actually increase the level of funding that they would receive under the PACT program. Today, NYCHA reserves some of that amount to fund its operations, but we would give that full amount. It's about $25 per apartment for resident organizing and participation activities. Whoever is elected as your representative.
And also, can you tell them that you represent the tenants and just not the TA board? If you representing the tenants and not just the TA board?
I can't hear.
That will, come on, that he is representing the tenants, not just the TA board. The whole tenant, not the tenant association. We're all in this. And when they came here to bring back here, I didn't ask them to come. They came, okay? And then I said, I would like to bring it to my residents to let them vote on it, okay? I could have, but some people, some tenants, some associations just do it. And they don't let the residents know. I think that wasn't right to do. To let my tenants make their own decisions about it. Who am I to say I don't want it? Okay, I said let the tenants have that choice in the matter, okay, in the vote. Okay, so I want to make that very clear to everyone. I said that from the beginning, I keep saying that until the end of this, okay? Because some people go around saying a lot of things that's not true. Okay, so I'm just letting you know, as the tenant president, I put it here for the residents to decide, not for me to decide. Okay, no one works for me. Okay, they work for the tenant association. I mean for the tenants, not the tenant association. We live here, just as you do. And I can take more time up too. Okay, thank you, thank you.
Can I ask a question? I need to listen a bit. A bit.
Okay. Yeah, I got I'm sorry.
You're talking about that you're supposed to be taking a vote, right? If we want it or not. Now, why do they have people going around knocking on doors so they can sign to switch over for Section 8? Because a tenant that I know, a friend, she called me and let me know yesterday that somebody at 7:30, the day before yesterday, they knocked on her door so she can sign to switch to Section 8. So this is what I'm trying to find out also. And also, you're talking about that NYCHA don't have enough funding to fix our apartments. Now, where is the money that they're getting for the rent and that people are paying $2,000 and $3,000 of rent? So where is our money going to?
So let me answer the first question
Okay.
first. So again, my name's Courtney. I run the voting program for NYCHA, right? So this is not the only development where we're doing this vote at. I run it with my colleague Sharon here. We schedule every single, I'm telling you right now, we schedule every single shift, we know every single person that's going out, and we know every single piece of information that's going out to residents, right? We have never, ever, ever in our history of voting have ever asked anyone to sign anything. We've never asked them to sign any kind of petition. What I will say is that as NYCHA, we want to make sure that you and all residents have the right information and the correct information. There are a lot of other organizations out there that's not associated with NYCHA that wants you to vote a certain way. If you want to go, if you want to vote the same way as them, that's your decision, right? This is why we're doing this vote. But whoever is asking people to sign things or petitions or whatever, that's not NYCHA. Those are other organizations.
She didn't sign it. She said it was a Spanish, tall, blonde lady that knocked at 7:30 at night in the house. And she's handicapped.
This was
She's disabled. No, the day before yesterday.
We were not here. Again, we know every single shift,
I'm
so
just-
again, our job is to make sure that you have the right information. We're not telling you how to vote a certain way. We just want to make sure you have all the information you need to make an informed vote.
I don't know where the mic
Thank
is
you.
at because it's taking long. I just have a real quick question. So basically, you're just saying if everybody, so
I can't hear you. Give it a mic. Thank you.
so basically, you're saying that we one shot do the vote, right? And the majority say yes, right? It's going to take about 2 years for them to come in here and look at development. So we looking at 5 years.
No. It would take about 2 years to do all of the planning work before the renovations would start. So the renovations could start, and again, this is an approximation because it's really hard to say with certainty until we kind of go through the process and the team gets here and they evaluate the conditions. But typically, it would be maybe 2 years or so until the renovations would begin. Once the renovations begin, I've seen projects take anywhere between 2 and 4 years to be fully completed. So the way that it works is they go in phases across the campus, and they would do one building at a time. There may be a way for them to expedite it, but they are doing that because if they do need to temporarily move people out of the home to address hazardous conditions in their apartment, they need to relocate them to other buildings across the campus while they stay there. And then once the work's done in their apartment, you move back. So it's not going to take 2 or 4 years for your apartment to be renovated. That would probably happen in a few weeks, but they would come to you eventually within that period, and then they would move on to the next part.
Okay, this is my last question. You sat up here and showed this slide about how disgusting Jacob Reese is, which it is, and I live in 1115, and my apartment is trash, completely trash. You're telling me that if we don't go with the pack, and I'm sorry, I'm Team Pack, if we don't go with pack, we're gonna stay with the nasty still conditions of not having water, having our rooms fall apart. That's what's gonna happen, they're not gonna fix it?
So
At this point, y'all should just do that, because y'all letting us live against the conditions. This is disgusting.
you know, it's just the unfortunate truth about the situation that NYCHA finds itself in. It's not because NYCHA wants our buildings to be in this condition or for you to be suffering. It's just that NYCHA is unable to maintain and to upgrade our buildings to the level that is required, given the funding levels that we receive.
I have a question. When the voting occurs, does everybody in the apartment, is everybody in the apartment able to vote, or is just head of household?
It's everyone who is a part of your lease who's over the age of 18 by the time voting ends, right? So voting ends March 28th, right?
Yeah.
So as long as they're 18 before March 28th, 2025, and they're part of your household composition, they can vote. Everyone will get a ballot in their household, mailed to them.
Thank you.
We have a question on this side.
Would stay just about the same. Okay, so just about the same doesn't mean the same. So what rights will change? Because it's either your rights will be the same or just about the same. It doesn't mean they'll be the same. I'm not going to argue. I listen very intently when a person speaks. Okay, that's all I know. I actually like the idea, to be honest. Because like my building, they defecate in the staircases. The door is broken right now. I'll show you a video. People stole, I got 2 dogs, they stole my dog's food out of the hall. So I like the idea of security. We got bumps that's shooting up dope in the hallways. I don't run in the hallways. And I mean, the tenants of the tenants, I don't care if they're here, hot dog. I ain't never been nowhere where they throw a personal item out the door window. My mother used to tell me to throw this directly into the tip.
Sir, I want to give everyone else a chance to ask their question as well. So, okay. So, sorry to correct you, gentlemen, but the rights and protections are the same. Your rent will still be calculated the same way it is today, at 30% of your adjusted gross household income. You have all the same rights in terms of being able to pass your apartment on to other people who are permanent members of your lease. You would automatically qualify for this program, even if you maybe applied for Section 8 in the past, were not found to be eligible. Everything else stays the same. Again, we're not trying to, utilities would continue to be paid by NYCHA. No charges or fees would be added to your lease as a result of this. Our goal is really just to preserve your experience and your cost of living, but allowing us to get more money from the federal government to make our repairs. That's simply what we're doing.
I have a
two-part question. Well, not two-part, two questions. The first one is, in April, I believe, of last year, I sent out an email to John Glasgow just to find out what was going on underground with the steam issue, which was horrible. It was going into the garden, heat was coming out, steam was coming out, it was damaging all the plants on by 1223 and 1225. And so when I sent that email, he said that NYCHA had started work on that issue, which was true. They started the work, we saw the piping, we saw all these things going on. Eventually they finished, to my understanding, and a few weeks later the steam came back out. I don't know if everybody noticed, the steam is coming out again.
Yeah.
And so we need to really, like, the foundation of Jacob Reese is really bad. And I know we want to do, I agree with a lot of the people here. If we don't do something, we're still going to live in trashy apartments and really bad situation, right? And this is a good option, and people have the choice to be able to do that. However, how can we be more, how can you certify, I would say, the conditions of the ground before we start any renovations?
It's a really good question, and I don't have the answer. That's something that we need to ask the partner team once they get selected, how they would approach the renovations, what would start first. The way that the system is set up right now is you have a central heating plant, and it runs steam lines underground to all of the buildings, to heat the buildings and to provide hot water. It's a very antiquated old system. New systems that are created run on hot water, not on steam. It's much higher pressure. And it's showing its age, right, because all of those pipes that are buried underground are starting to crumble, and you see steam shooting up out of the ground. So that's what's happening. It's something that we'll have to look at if we move forward and we select a team. They're going to have to make sure that every building has, during the winter months, reliable heat and hot water. Some of our other developments that have struggled with similar kinds of systems. One property in Harlem that's undergoing renovation right now. After the new property manager came on site, they had to deploy temporary boilers for every building so that they can get them off the old system and get them on reliable heating immediately.
Okay, but my question is, we invested contractors to come and do this work, which took 4 to 5 months, give or take, right? And so it wasn't resolved. So what did they do? And I think, transparency is, I think the tenant, me, myself, I want to know what happened down there. I want to know what happened underground, under my building.
Sure.
I live by Con Ed. There's always drilling going on at night. I'm thinking they're still working on the piping or on the steam situation.
I can, just in the interest of time, because I want other people to have the chance to ask questions, I'll look into that and I'll get an answer for the next meeting.
So hi everybody. So Greece is already in a deficit of $840 million. The new HUD secretary, Scott Turner, is not funding anything, whether it's Section 8, Section 9, is not happening. Trump is not funding EPA or environmental, so your argument, he's not funding that. He doesn't care about funding for black and brown. He wants to end all things that benefits us. Pay attention to the signs. I hope everybody watched that Kendrick Lamar Super Bowl. He was giving you a message. Okay? Pay attention. Wake up. Because your 964 regs, it's not gonna benefit you. Your rights are gone. Section 3, which deals with repairs and union. So the union workers who are NYCHA workers, they're not gonna no longer exist under that pact. It's not gonna happen. Look what happened at Cabrini in Chicago. Okay? You be sitting there waiting and Rosalina Square, you should watch on PBS if you can find it. But at the end of the day, they're not gonna fund anything that benefits you. They want it for big developers. That's why there's this guy from, what is it called, whatever, realtor, whatever real estate company they're dealing with, they always push them up every so often. That's why they can't tell you definitively what's going to happen 2 to 3 years down the line. Because guess what? They're going to put a lien on the property when they can't fund it no more. And you're going to be on the street. You're going to be on the house. Okay? So, All I can say to you do is to organize and pay attention to what they're doing to you. Because they can invoke Section 18, which will demolish our buildings. That is one of the things they are failing to tell you. Okay? And I'm telling you that from the gut.
Right,
Because I mean
let
it.
me respond to
You
that.
can say what you want because you're not telling them the truth. There's no transparency.
That's fine.
Okay?
Let me respond to that.
I appreciate my statement, but I'm letting you know, research, look things up, okay? You can find me on social media, my number, I'm in the neighborhood, Sadie, hi everybody, love y'all, but pay attention to what they're doing. Your 964 regs are not going to mean anything. That is like your Bill of Rights that they're taking away from you.
Thank you for the comment. That's great. So, you know, one thing we do know is that Section 8 has received strong support from both parties. You're right. Nobody knows. We are in uncertain times. I think Harvey said that at the beginning, right? However, what we do know is what we have today and what's available. And we have this opportunity, and I don't think we should look away from that opportunity while it's still here. Next question. Jason, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I'm Jason Morello. For those who don't know, I'm a longtime resident here at Jacoby's Houses for almost 35 years. And I've been here through the transitions that we had when our developments were good, and then I've seen over the past decade how it turned to the worse. And I am also, for those who don't know, I am the city council candidate that's running here for real change that is representing all of us. And I'm a Republican, a conservative Republican at that. And I'm here advocating on behalf of over 9,000, almost 10,000 constituents here, many of them who live in public housing. And I have some serious concerns regarding this. What is going to happen to our rents? What protections do we have that's going to safeguard elderly, low-income households? Because once we convert to PAC, we're going to become privatized, just like the condominiums we have right across the street from us on Avenue D. So what protections is all our residents are going to have, especially low-income or working families, if this goes through? Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Let me answer that question. As we presented tonight, as we have in our documents, as we have on the NYCHA website, and we have on the project website, and as it is on the HUD website, rents remain the same as they are today at 30% of your income. There are no additional fees added on, and essentially it is the same in terms of rent and your rights and protections, Section 9 versus Section 8.
So can you answer that why does Brad Pack has a 500% eviction rate within 1 year after they take over a development?
Yeah, that's not true.
Yeah, it was released by the controller, the New York City controller of audit.
Yeah,
that's the facts.
No, those are not facts.
Okay.
That was not an accurate report.
Okay.
I also want to clarify that this is not privatization, right? NYCHA continues to own the property, the land and the buildings.
That's exactly
We also administer the Section 8 program. We're partnering with the private sector to bring in the resources and do the renovations.
Well, I gave him my card. I look forward to having.
And I also want, because no, sir, you're raising important questions, and I want to clarify.
I look at your reports.
Your question about how we can guarantee that rent stays the same.
Thank you for your time.
Everybody would be provided a lease, and that would stipulate exactly the terms of your rent, how it would be calculated. This is also a HUD requirement, the federal government. Again, we're not taking you out of any affordable housing program. You're moving from one federally funded program to another. So it's a federal requirement that we maintain your rent the same way. You would have a lease that guarantees that right as well.
Okay, so I want to give Daphne the props for bringing that up.
So you're just gonna
when she said that we didn't call PAC called us, and I appreciate that for saying that.
You've been having that?
And I also agree with that it's part of the residents to get together and make this decision. Claire, Courtney, before we and tonight I need to speak to you regarding the voting process and what was done before Simon shut me down. There's some facts that need to be said on the record with you. I have two questions. If PAC will vote in, it's automatically planned in the plan to displace tenants to put while they fix their apartments. Where are these tenants going to go? That's the first question. I heard, and from my research, other people who've entered with PAC, when they would displace the residents, they only took 30% back back to their own apartments or whatever it is. And it's been proven. Yes, it has. I just spoke to a council member yesterday, and his building alone, he was the one.
Where was that?
His is across the street from Bellevue.
What's the name of the development?
The one across the street from Bellevue is the only one.
Over in Kingston.
Yeah,
I think you're referring to East 28th Street?
Yes.
Okay, that is not accurate, because everybody who lived at East 28th Street was allowed to remain there.
Right.
So that is.
I'm not talking about, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. I think it was miscommunicated. He was in the process of the whole PAC thing. They were against it, they somehow overcame it, whatever it is, and he was fighting and he got everything back. I'm talking about the people displacement. Chelsea was displaced, the buildings were knocked down.
No,
Yes?
that has not happened, no.
That has happened yet.
That has not happened, no.
All right, so where would they go?
So let me take it step by step. So if we would endeavor to make all the renovations while you remain in your home, that's our idea, because we've learned from history, right? In the past, there have been other programs that NYCHA has implemented that did result in displacement. I'm talking about projects like Prospect Plaza, where residents were removed from the building was demolished, and only some of the residents came back, and that's left a really challenging issue for us and for our residents, and there's a lot of mistrust that was a result of previous mistakes, such as that project. The way that we do PAC today is in response to those issues that came up in the
I'm here recording everything here.
We want to make sure that residents can stay in their home if it's possible within safe, because taking you out of your home to do renovations creates all kinds of anxieties and inconveniences. So if we can, you would stay in your home while the renovations happen. They would proceed in kind of a methodical way. We would do the kitchens one week,
That's all right,
we would do
because
the
I
bathroom
find
the next
somebody to
week,
fix it.
we would do the flooring the next. It would kind of happen like that. And there'd
I
be
love
movers
you.
to help kind of move your stuff around to facilitate that. If there's unsafe conditions that are created in your apartment because we're opening up walls, because we need to abate and remove lead-based paint or remediate asbestos or other harmful materials, you would be required to temporarily move. It's not displacement. You would temporarily move to another vacant apartment within Reese houses, within your development, while the work is completed in your home. And then once that work is completed in your home, you move back to your apartment. Before anyone moves out, before you have to move, if you have to temporarily move to another apartment, you would have a signed lease agreement, again guaranteeing your tenancy in your home. You would also sign a temporary move agreement, which further affirms your right and explains exactly that you're going to be moved temporarily to a vacant apartment, and then once the work is completed, you move back to your original apartment. And it also explains that the PAC partner team would provide moving and packing resources and whatever else to support you in that transition. But that's exactly how that process would work. So there's no displacement or moving of people anywhere off of campus. Everything happens within your community, and everyone would have a lease or a temporary move agreement guaranteeing your right to return to your home.
The apartment that
Another question.
set up, is that mine?
The question was how we would set up the vacant apartments to temporarily move people to. It's a good question. So when the partner team begins the work, those are usually the apartments they would fix up first. So they would look at where are all the vacant units across the campus. They would fix those up, make them livable and safe, so that people can move to those and then kind of start that process.
What I mean is that it's only temporary. They put like bed, microwave,
No, they would move your furniture. Your furniture would come with you. You wouldn't be living in with other people's beds or furniture or anything like that. Yeah. But they would also provide utilities and internet and all that stuff. Yeah. You might not have to be moved for a long period of time. It might be that you just have to move out for a day or two, or maybe a couple of hours. It really depends on the situation.
Not other people, we did it by putting, we set up a bed, microwave, and stuff like that in the car. Not other people.
All right, just a few things. One, I'm gonna address to you guys, and then I'm gonna address to the residents. I just want everybody to know that I have secured well over 20% of people saying they don't want backpack. It's not that we don't want the repairs, it's that there's too many uncertainties. There's ways they could have gotten money. There's ways that we can ask the politicians to fund us, but we have to organize and we have to come together. Ultimately, you know what? We're gonna keep petitioning, and we're not just telling people what to do, we're giving them information, and we're telling them where to find it. Not everyone is saying misinformation. That means that they're doing their research, meaning wherever they're getting data, it's a reliable source, okay? So that's what we're telling people to look at. We're not telling people what to do. That's number one. Number two, you know, Rat Pack is going around knocking on doors, which is fine, but you guys have these NYCHA IDs and you say you're from NYCHA. Yeah, it's a department, but people should know that this is a biased process. These people are Rat Pack. In NYCHA is a department. That's the department they work for. Okay, so people should know that. NYCHA's not here talking to us, independent NYCHA, that's just NYCHA. This is a department that is Rat Pack. So they're telling us that there's no other way that we won't get our repairs, but you know what? There is ways, and these ways can be discovered. We just have to get into it. The other thing is that when they're knocking on these doors, at least 2 videos where there's physically turning people's doorknobs.
No.
Yes, I have the videos.
If you have the video, then
I have the videos. I will send it to the proper officials and reporters and whoever. You know why? Because, wait a minute, hold on. Because it's accurate. It's not, I want to make these things up because I want you guys to look so bad. I don't need to do that. You guys, for this whole year, have done a process that's not been objective and have not shown it's just the pros. It's not the cons of the program. And that's all you have fed us for a whole year.
So I do want to just clarify, I have not been here for the past year, okay? I asked Simon. We haven't started door knocking until very recently because we just announced this voting process. Everyone will be getting a notice of vote in the mail pretty soon here if they haven't already. I do want to clarify, right, my title is Deputy Director of Voting. I run the voting program at NYCHA. I do not work for the real estate department. I don't work for Simon. I don't work for PACT. We do other votes at NYCHA that has different options as well. Like I don't vote, I don't work for real estate. I want to be very clear. For me personally, I don't care how you vote. Me personally, as Courtney who works for NYCHA, right? I want to make sure that residents vote, and that's my agenda. I want to make sure that as many people vote. I want to make sure that as many residents have the opportunity to vote, and that's why we have 30 days, which is really long comparatively to like your local political elections, right? And you can vote by mail, online, or in person. We make this as accessible as possible. So if I were knocking on your door and you asked me the pros and cons of both programs, I will tell you the pros and cons of both programs, just like I do for every single other election, right? My personal, goal is to make sure as many residents vote, and this is also something that means a lot to me and Sharon, right? Because we take this very seriously. I think for a very long time, NYCHA has come in and they've said, you know what, residents of whatever development, you're doing this whether you like it or not. And this is one of the first opportunities where we're actually working with residents hand in hand, and we want to say, you know what, we want to go with whatever the residents say. So if you want to vote for Section 9, that's perfectly within your right, but that doesn't mean that we're going to stop doing our door knocking separately, making sure that residents have the information. And so those allegations, you know, that you're saying that people are opening people's doors, right? I haven't seen the video, right? I haven't seen it. And so if that's true, I want to take that very seriously because again, this is something that means a lot to us. Okay, but I don't work for the real estate department. I'm a NYCHA employee, but my goal is to make sure that everyone here at the development votes.
How does that ballot, are we going to be able to look at that ballot first? And for just a question for you. And then for everybody here, I would suggest you do not call. You take your paper ballot, you vote, and you certify it, and you keep it for your records. Because they have to come back with the same information. So when we have 200 people who voted, then those 200 people, and that's what I'm gonna suggest, and everybody here should recommend that the other residents do the same, is to certify their ballots and keep it as proof, so we can, when we ask them to for you and see where we stood in this whole process, that it matches.
Ooh, so let me clarify, let me just walk people through how actually voting happens, right? And how the election administrator certifies it. So what happens is that every